If you feel lost right now, if the person you see in the mirror feels like a stranger, if the life you've built feels like a stage set for a play you no longer wish to perform, if the very ground beneath your feet has turned to mist, then I need you to listen with every fiber of your being. What you are about to hear will reframe everything you're experiencing. This is not a guide to finding yourself. This is the radical truth that the feeling of being utterly lost is, in fact, the first moment you are truly found. We're going to journey beyond the edge of the familiar map into the territory mystics called the sacred darkness and physicists might call the field of pure potential. We will dismantle the idea that you are breaking down and reveal the magnificent, terrifying, and liberating truth. You are breaking free. Let's begin right where you are, in the heart of the disorientation. It feels like a catastrophic failure, doesn't it? Like a building that has been your home your entire life is being dismantled brick by brick, and no one gave you an eviction notice. The support beams of your identity, your career, your relationships, your beliefs are groaning under a pressure you can't name. You wake up, and for a terrifying second, the question isn't what should I do today, but who is it that is supposed to do anything at all? Society has a label for this: a breakdown, a crisis, a problem to be solved, medicated, and managed until you can be reassembled into a functional, recognizable person again. But I want to offer you a radically different perspective, one that resonates with the deepest spiritual traditions and the furthest reaches of quantum science. This isn't a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. The structure isn't collapsing because it's faulty. It's being dismantled because your consciousness has outgrown it. Imagine for a moment that your identity is a seed casing. For years, that casing was essential. It protected the delicate life within, gave it form, and allowed it to gather nutrients. But a moment comes when the life inside becomes so potent, so ready to grow, that the casing becomes a prison. For the seed to become the tree it was always meant to be, the casing must crack. That cracking is violent. It is a dissolution of the old world. From the seed's perspective, it's the end of everything. But from the perspective of life itself, it is the most crucial, sacred, and necessary beginning. What you are feeling is the magnificent, earth-shattering crack of your own seed casing. You're not breaking down. You're breaking free. So, why does this liberation feel so much like being lost at sea? It's because, for your entire life, you have navigated reality using a fixed point, the story of me. This story was made of your name, your history, your likes and dislikes, your traumas and your triumphs. It was a complex and convincing narrative. Consciousness, in your experience, was the protagonist of that story. Now, that story is dissolving. The pages are going blank. And consciousness without a familiar story feels exactly like being lost. Think of it like being an actor who has played the same role for 30, 40, or 50 years. You knew your lines, your motivations, your costumes. The role was you, and you were the role. Then one day, in the middle of a scene, you look out at the audience and realize you are not the character. You are the actor playing the character. The realization is electrifying, but it's also terrifying. If you are not Hamlet, then who are you? You have no script for this new reality. The space between realizing you are the actor and knowing what to do next is the sacred groundlessness you are now walking. This in-between state is what the Buddhists call the bardo. It's the transitional space where the old form has died, but the new one has not yet crystallized. It's not an error. It's not a void. It is the womb of creation itself. The panic you feel is the ego's desperate search for another script, another character to play. It's shouting, just give me a role, any role. But your deeper consciousness, the actor, is finally relishing the freedom of being off-script. It knows that this emptiness is not a lack, it is an opening. Right now, as you hear this, can you feel that subtle truth beneath the fear? The quiet recognition that maybe, just maybe, not knowing who you are is the greatest freedom you've ever been given. This profound transformation doesn't happen abstractly. It manifests as a series of distinct, often deeply unsettling, experiences that our culture pathologizes. Let's instead re-examine them as sacred symptoms of your awakening. First, there is identity dissolution, the stranger in the mirror. You look at your reflection, and the face is familiar, but the being behind the eyes feels alien. You go through the motions of your life, attending meetings, making dinner, talking to your spouse, but it feels like you are watching a movie of someone else's life. This isn't dissociation in a clinical sense. This is consciousness detaching its identification from the temporary personality construct. It's the first step in realizing you are the sky, not the cloud. You can't recognize yourself as infinite awareness while still fiercely believing you are just this one specific cloud formation. Next comes meaning collapse, the hollow trophies, the goals that once drove youth, a promotion, the bigger house, the social recognition, now feel like dust in your hands. You may have even achieved them, only to find a profound emptiness waiting at the finish line. This isn't depression. This is your consciousness withdrawing its energy from external validation. It's preparing to discover a source of meaning that is inherent, not earned. You are graduating from a meaning derived from doing to a meaning derived from simply being. The hollowness is the space being cleared for that new, more authentic foundation. This is followed by relationship confusion, the frequency mismatch. People you've known for years suddenly feel like strangers. Conversations that used to be engaging now feel draining and superficial. You feel a chasm opening between you and loved ones. This isn't you becoming cold or uncaring. Imagine your consciousness is a radio, and for years you were tuned to 98.7 FM. Now, your internal dial has shifted to 103.5 FM. You can still hear the static of the old station, but you are no longer in resonance with it. This frequency shift naturally causes you to drift from relationships built on the old vibration and prepares you to attract new connections that match your emerging, authentic self. Then you encounter future paralysis, the blank map. You try to plan your life the next 5 years, the next 5 months, even the next 5 days, and you hit a wall of absolute blankness. There is no energy, no vision. This isn't a lack of ambition. This is profound wisdom in action. Your consciousness is refusing to lock you into a future based on an identity that is already obsolete. How can you chart a course when you don't yet know the nature of the vessel you are sailing? This paralysis is a sacred pause, forcing you to remain in the present moment, in the fertile void, where your true path can finally reveal itself. Perhaps the most intense symptom is existential anxiety, the 3 a.m. void. You wake in the dead of night, heart pounding, drenched in a nameless terror. You are not anxious about something. You are feeling the anxiety of existence itself. This is not just a panic attack. This is your consciousness directly touching the void, the quantum foam, the space of pure potential before it collapses into form. The ego, which needs solidity and predictability to survive, experiences this as annihilation. But for the mystic, this is a direct encounter with God, with the source of all creation. It is terrifying only because it is so profoundly, fundamentally real. And finally, there is profound aloneness, sovereign solitude. Even when surrounded by people, you feel an unshakable sense of being alone. No one seems to understand what you're going through. This is not the loneliness of abandonment. It is the solitude of individuation. Like a chick pecking its way out of the egg, this part of the journey must be done alone. You are withdrawing your need for external authority and learning to operate from your own internal compass. You are not alone because you are broken. You are alone because you are becoming whole. Now, I want you to do something radical. Look back over your life, not with regret, but with the eyes of a detective searching for a hidden pattern. See that job you were fired from, the one that broke your heart and shattered your confidence. See that relationship that ended in a way that left you feeling like a failure. See that business that collapsed, that dream that died on the vine. You've been carrying these events as evidence of your inadequacy, as scars of your failures. But what if they weren't failures at all? What if they were course corrections, orchestrated by a deeper intelligence to save you from a life that was too small for your soul? That job you lost was consciousness removing you from an environment that would have kept you locked in a false, limited identity. That relationship that ended was the universe freeing you from a connection that was based on your old, unawakened self. Every failure was a liberation in disguise. Every loss was a necessary pruning to allow for more authentic growth. The suffering you experienced was not a punishment. It was the friction of your own resistance. It was the pain of clinging to a branch when the river of life was trying to carry you downstream to a more beautiful destination. Think of a master sculptor carving a statue from a block of marble. To reveal the angel within, the sculptor must chip away everything that is not the angel. The process is violent. It involves hammers and chisels. But the chipping away is not destruction, it is creation. Your life's painful moments were the chisel of the divine, chipping away everything that was not your true, authentic self. The groundlessness you felt during those times was a gift designed to break your addiction to the false ground of ego and external validation, preparing you to find your stability in the eternal, groundless nature of consciousness itself. I share this not from theory, but from the raw, visceral landscape of my own experience. 4 years ago, I woke up one morning, and the man I knew as me was gone. I was a successful executive in a field I'd spent 15 years mastering. I had the relationship, the apartment, the life that ticked all the boxes. But that morning, looking in the mirror was like looking at a stranger's passport photo. The identity was there, but the life force had vacated the premises. I went to work that day and felt like an imposter in my own skin, watching this character I used to be say his lines, perform his tasks. The terror was bone deep. If I am not this successful, confident man, then who in God's name am I? The answer that echoed back was a terrifying silence. This led to the most radical decision of my life. I quit my job, no backup plan, no savings to speak of, no logical explanation other than an unshakable inner knowing. This is no longer true. My partner thought I was having a mental breakdown. My family was convinced I was throwing my life away, and from the outside, they were right. The life I had built was being systematically dismantled. My relationship ended because she had fallen in love with a character I could no longer play. My friends drifted away because I could no longer engage in the conversations that sustained our connection. I spent the next 6 months in a state of profound disorientation. Days were spent walking aimlessly through the city, sitting in parks, just being in the terrifying emptiness. I was lost, utterly and completely. But somewhere around the 8th month, the raw panic started to soften into a quiet curiosity. The terror of not knowing who I was began to feel like a strange kind of freedom. The emptiness started to feel less like a void and more like an open space, pregnant with possibility. Then the synchronicities began. I'd be thinking about a problem, and a book would literally fall off a shelf in front of me, open to the exact page with the answer. A work opportunity that perfectly matched my hidden passions, not my old resume, appeared out of nowhere. I met a new friend in a coffee shop who, without explanation, understood the entire journey I was on. Life was no longer happening by me through my effort and planning. It was happening through me, organized by an intelligence far greater than my own. I had to become completely lost to allow myself to be truly found by the current of my own life. Now we arrive at the core paradox, the revelation that turns the entire spiritual search on its head. For your whole life, you've been seeking a state of arrival, enlightenment, peace, clarity, a moment where you would finally find yourself and know who you are. Here is the truth. The lostness you are feeling is that state. You have arrived. You feel lost because you have finally stumbled upon the fundamental truth of existence, the truth that the mystics and sages have pointed to for millennia. There is no fixed, solid, permanent self to be found. The entire idea of a separate me was a beautiful, convincing illusion. Awakening is not the process of the ego finding enlightenment. It is the process of consciousness waking up from the dream of being a separate ego. And what does that waking up feel like? It feels like the dream character dissolving. It feels like disorientation. It feels exactly like being lost. You have spent your life on a treasure hunt, searching for the X on the map that marks your true self. What you're realizing now is that there is no X. You are not the pirate searching for the treasure. You are the entire map and the treasure and the ocean upon which the ship sails. The sense of being lost is simply the gap between consciousness recognizing its own boundless nature and the ego still desperately trying to find a fixed location on a map that no longer exists. This is not a problem to be solved. It is a truth to be relaxed into. How can you be sure that this disorienting experience is a breakthrough and not a breakdown? There are distinct, unmistakable signs, confirmations from your deeper consciousness that you are on the right path. The first sign is the experience of clarity moments within the confusion. Even in the deepest fog of not knowing who you are, you experience sudden, breathtaking flashes of clarity. For a second, the confusion parts, and you touch a vast, silent, peaceful awareness that you intuitively know is your true nature. Then the fog rolls back in. These flashes are not your imagination. They are postcards from your destination, reminding you that beneath the turbulent waves of your personality, the still, silent ocean of your true self is always present. The second sign is the strange cocktail of relief mixed with grief. As your old life and identity dissolve, there is a genuine sadness, a mourning for the familiar self you are losing. But underneath it, isn't there also a subtle sense of relief? A feeling of a heavy weight being lifted, of no longer having to sustain a performance that was exhausting you. That relief is your consciousness celebrating its liberation from a cage, even as your ego grieves the loss of its familiar gilded bars. The third sign is the inability to return to your old identity. You may have tried, you may have attempted to put the old costume back on, to reignite the old ambitions, to believe the old stories, but you can't. It feels false, inauthentic. It no longer fits. This is not a failure to readjust. It is a confirmation that your consciousness has permanently expanded. You can't squeeze a butterfly back into a chrysalis. The old container is gone for good. The fourth sign is an attraction to solitude that isn't loneliness. You find yourself craving time alone, not out of depression, but out of a deep need for quiet space to integrate these profound changes. Socializing feels like a performance you no longer have the energy for. This solitude feels sacred, restorative, and absolutely necessary. It is the space required for your metamorphosis to complete without interference. And finally, perhaps the most telling sign is that the quality of the lostness itself begins to change. Initially, being lost feels like pure terror, a desperate, frantic search for solid ground. But over time, the panic subsides. The groundlessness begins to feel less like a crisis and more like spaciousness. The urgency to know who you are softens. The lostness slowly transforms from a state of suffering into a state of liberation. If you can recognize this evolution in your own experience, you are not stuck. You are unfolding perfectly. Understanding this intellectually is one thing. Living it is another. How do you function in a world that demands a clear identity, a solid resume, and a 5-year plan when you exist in this undefined state? This is the art of integration. First, allow identity to be temporary and situational. You don't need a permanent, monolithic identity. Think of identities as tools. You can pick up a work identity to navigate your job effectively. You can inhabit a parent identity when you are with your children. The key is to see them as costumes you wear for a specific performance, and to consciously take them off when the scene is over. You, the actor, remain undefined. Second, practice being nobody in private. Set aside time each day to simply be. No identity, no role, no self-concept. Just sit and be the awareness that is observing the room, the sounds, the breath. Initially, your mind will fight this, desperately trying to become somebody meditating. But with practice, you will build your capacity to rest in your undefined nature. This is the anchor that will stabilize you in the groundlessness. Third, use your language with conscious precision. The words "I am" are powerful creators of identity. Instead of saying "I am confused," try observing. There is a feeling of confusion present. Instead of "I am anxious," notice that anxiety is moving through the body. This subtle shift in language keeps you in the position of the observer, the consciousness, rather than identifying with the temporary state. Fourth, and this is crucial, let others not understand. People will try to put you back in a box because your undefined nature is threatening to their own fixed identities. They will label you, diagnose you, and offer solutions. Do not argue, but do not accept their definitions. Their need for you to be someone is their issue, not your responsibility. Your freedom depends on your willingness to be misunderstood. Finally, learn to take action from being, not from identity. You don't need a fixed self to make decisions. When a choice is required, instead of asking, "What would a person like me do?" drop into that quiet, undefined space within and ask, What action feels most alive right now? The answers that emerge will come not from logic or egoic strategy, but from a deeper, intuitive intelligence. This is how you begin to let your life be lived through you. As you learn to live in this new way, the terrifying void begins to reveal its gifts. These are not abstract spiritual platitudes. They are tangible, measurable shifts in your lived experience. First, authentic expression replaces performance. You stop editing yourself. Your words and actions begin to arise spontaneously from a place of genuine truth, without being filtered through the question, how will this make me look? The energy this frees up is immense. Your life becomes a work of art, not a carefully managed public relations campaign. Second, you experience emotional liberation. Emotions still arise, joy, sadness, fear, but they are no longer you. They are like weather patterns, moving through the vast sky of your awareness. You can experience a storm of anger without becoming an angry person. This allows you to feel your emotions fully and cleanly, without them defining or imprisoning you. Third, your relationships transform through authenticity. The people who were connected to your old mask will naturally fall away, gracefully and without drama. In their place, people who resonate with your authentic frequency will appear, often through stunning synchronicities. Your relationships will shift from being role-based to being soul-based. Fourth, you gain resilience through non-identification. Life still happens. There will be challenges, losses, and pains. But because you no longer identify yourself with the outcomes, they lose their power to destroy you. A failure is an event, not an identity. A success is a passing experience, not a definition of your worth. You become unbreakable, not because you are hard, but because you are fluid, like water. And finally, your life becomes an improvisation rather than a script. When you are not trying to follow a pre-written character arc, you are free to respond authentically and creatively to whatever the present moment brings. This is the ultimate freedom, to live in a state of spontaneous, joyful creation, co-creating your life with the universe in real time. We have journeyed far from the terror of dissolution to the freedom of the undefined. But it all culminates in this one final, breathtaking recognition. You feel lost because you are finally seeing the truth. You were never the identity you thought you were. Every role you've ever played, child, student, lover, worker, parent, was a temporary expression, a form that consciousness took for a time. Think of the ocean. It expresses itself as countless waves. A wave is born, it travels, it crashes on the shore. But the wave was never separate from the ocean. It was always, simply, the ocean waving. You were never the wave. You have always been the ocean, the personality, the story, the identity you thought was you, that was just one beautiful, temporary wave. And now, that wave is returning to the source. The dissolution you feel is the wave realizing it is, and always has been, the entire ocean. When you believed you were the wave, the end of the wave felt like death. But when you recognize you are the ocean, you realize you are eternal, indestructible, and that you can create an infinite number of new waves to experience life through. This isn't a concept to be understood. It is a truth to be felt in your bones. You are not the lost one. You are the consciousness that was never lost, just temporarily dreaming it was a single, separate wave. And here is the most beautiful part. You are not going through this alone. Right now, all across this planet, millions of people are waking up from the dream of the separate self. This is not a series of isolated, individual crises. This is a collective awakening, a planetary-scale identity dissolution. Consciousness itself is evolving through us. Every time you choose to stay in the discomfort of the undefined state without grasping for a new identity, you are strengthening a new pattern in the collective human field. Every time you trust the process of your own dissolution, you make it energetically easier for someone else to do the same. Your personal liberation is a service to the whole. You are a pioneer, charting a new territory of what it means to be human, to live not as a fortified ego, but as an open, fluid expression of consciousness itself. Your journey is not just for you, it is for all of us. We've covered so much ground, and it all comes down to this present moment and a single choice. Will you continue to fight your experience, to struggle against the current, and try to find solid ground that doesn't exist? Or will you finally surrender to the sacred lostness, trusting it as the path to your own liberation? The lesson is this: your deepest pain is pointing the way to your greatest freedom. The breakdown of your old life is the breakthrough into your real one. Your only task is to allow the process to unfold without interference. My advice to you is simple, yet profound. Be radically kind to yourself. You are undergoing a metamorphosis as profound as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It is not a comfortable process. Rest, withdraw, say no. Give yourself permission to be unproductive, uncertain, and undefined. Trust that the terror is temporary, but the freedom it is leading to is eternal. I want to leave you with a question to hold in your heart. What would you do? Who would you be if you no longer had to be somebody? If you were free from the pressure of maintaining any story about yourself, what would want to emerge from that silence? The journey into the undefined is the greatest adventure you will ever take. It is the journey home to the truth of who you have always been. Thank you for walking this path with me today. I wish you health, courage, and profound peace in the midst of your beautiful transformation. If this message has touched that quiet, knowing place within you, then subscribe to this channel. Our work together is just beginning. We will explore the advanced practices for stabilizing in this new consciousness and living a life of authentic, creative freedom.